All right, we're going to get started here. Welcome, everyone, to the All About Nothing podcast, kind of daily show. I am Barrett Gruber, host of the All About Nothing podcast. With me not is Bill Kimler, who usually hosts this particular program with me. If you listened to the last episode that we did, which was back in February, end of February, Mr. Kimler announced that he was not going to be doing this show. He was leaving. He was departing because he was going to be running as the campaign manager for Dr. Jamil Brooks, who is running for State House for her district. I think it's 12. I could be wrong, but I think it could be 12. So Bill is not going to be able to join me back on this program until potentially sometime after November. That would be my hope, is that Bill will be able to come back and do the show with us. But that is a good ways down the line. So just to give you sort of a heads up, Bill isn't going to be able to do this program until he is able to return, which isn't going to be again until November. But until then, if you want to participate in the show, you can chat with us on YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or wherever else you're listening or watching. You can find links at theallaboutnothing.com. Please also consider following and subscribing wherever you're listening to us. That would be great. We would love that. It has been a little more than 2 months since we've done this kind of daily show, and I appreciate everyone who has waited patiently for us to come back, me to come back, I guess. There were some plans in the making as far as having another guest host come on with me, but we haven't quite gotten that put into concrete yet. So it's something we're still working on, and when we do, I think everyone will be pleased. It's someone that if you listen to this podcast, it's someone that you will probably recognize because they have been on multiple times. They have had their own podcasts in the past, so I will be excited to introduce them when that is available. But right now, it's not, and that's mostly because I put a timeline out that was maybe not quite far enough ahead in order to make that happen. But that's me. That's how things happen. And frankly, I'll work with what I have. So with that said, a lot has gone on since the last episode that we did. And when I say a lot, I mean like a lot. Because if you think about it, so since February, which I think our last show was like end of February, we have launched a war with Iran. That war has had multiple ceasefires and has come back and gone back and forth. And, you know, whether it's Israel ignoring any ceasefires or it's Iran attacking or laying mines in the Strait of Hormuz, or it is the United States basically becoming a pirate entity and overtaking Iranian ships or ships that are flying the Iranian flag through the Strait of Hormuz. I mean, it's been such a back and forth, and it's not really settled on exactly what it is that's going on. You know, as of today, we were supposed to be guiding ships through the Strait of Hormuz, and at least at last report, it sounds like there were 2 American flag merchant ships that did transit the Strait of Hormuz. President Donald Trump did announce Project Freedom, a U.S. naval operation to escort commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, warning that any interference will have to be dealt with forcefully. Partially closed since February 28, the Strait of Hormuz has created a global energy crisis as oil and liquid natural gas shipments stalled, prompting the United States to intervene. Despite claims from Iranian state media that the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps hit a U.S. warship, Central Command denied any strikes. The U.S. supports the mission with destroyers and over 100 aircraft. Internationally, security expert Robert Page argued on Monday that Trump's made a public bet, warning the strategy has only 2 likely outcomes: a major military escalation or humiliation for the United States. By sending escorts, the United States has made itself directly responsible for keeping the corridor open if the operation fails, fails even once, Washington must escalate to avoid a visible loss of global control around the authority. So that brings a lot of questions as far as what is the United States military's role now in the region. If we are under this ceasefire, and there are reports that Donald Trump is considering apparently a couple more potential, peace deals with Iran. It does seem as though that could potentially lead to an agreement with Iran, and that we could potentially see a release, or at least more ships flowing through the Strait of Hormuz. It doesn't seem as though any sort of deal is potentially going to come with any benefits for the United States, in the sense that, maybe for us buying gasoline and things like that, but we definitely seem to be on the losing end of this. Iran doesn't really seem to have any respect for the United States, in the sense that they don't see Donald Trump as a good leader. And I say that not in jest or anything like that, but I think they see some weaknesses that our president has, which I think that, if you are open-minded enough to recognize them, that you see them as well. It's this game between us and Iran, I think, only has potentially one outcome for the United States, and that's to make it look like we as a nation are foolish, that we entered into a war in February that really had no specific, it didn't have any real specific end point. There weren't any real set goals, because I think initially the goal was we were eliminating the likelihood that Iran would be able to produce nuclear weapons. Well, back in June of last year, we launched an attack against several nuclear sites that gave the impression that there was no likely nuclear development in Iran, because we had annihilated their entire nuclear facility program, whatever. And then it turned out that 7-8 months later, we have to go back and fight them again to prevent them from creating nuclear weapons. And we get all of the bullshit about how the Iranians rebuilt their nuclear program in 7 months. But in June of last year, we were told it was decimated. We were told that it was annihilated. And those are pretty definitive. There's not a lot of wiggle room on what those two things mean, unless, of course, you're part of the MAGA movement, and you are so staunchly behind and believe almost everything that Donald Trump says. Then, yeah, you absolutely probably believe that the Iranians have the ability to rebuild in 8 months from annihilation. Again, annihilation is an extremely finite term. Like, there's no wiggle room on that. Annihilation is gone, done, complete, nothing left. And yet, here we are in February. That's the reason we're going to war with Iran, is to prevent them from creating nuclear weapons that would potentially threaten the United States. Doesn't really seem feasible when you think about it. And I think that, for the most part, the people that support Donald Trump, if they heard the same rhetoric from a Joe Biden or from a Barack Obama, I think that they would probably question what it is they're hearing. They would probably have doubts about the idea that our president, whomever it was, announced that Iranians' nuclear ability, or their desire to build nuclear weapons, had been decimated. And then to turn around 8 months later to have to go back in to potentially do it again. It's not feasible. And I think that if you had used any critical thinking skills, you probably would have looked at this and said, that doesn't make sense. Why would 7-8 months. How do they rebuild in 7-8 months? So again, so that was initially what the idea behind us having to go to war with Iran was that we were preventing them from nuclear weapons. This was back in February. Then it was they were in the first hours of the war. They were launching attacks against several of our, I guess, allies in the region, the UAE, Israel, of course, Kuwait. We had Qatar, whatever your preferred pronunciation is, and so that was part of it. Was we were attacking them to keep them from attacking our allies or our military bases in the region. And, that was sort of a tit for tat. We'd hit them, they'd hit us. We'd hit them, they'd hit us. And it just kind of continued to go back and forth like that. And at some point, it became all about the Strait of Hormuz, because the Strait of Hormuz has about a fifth of the world's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz out of that region, and it goes all around the world from there. And that sort of has been the continuing theme of what we're doing in the region now, is trying to convince the Iranians to stop shooting at ships that are trying to traverse through the Strait of Hormuz. We're trying to prevent ships that have value from hitting sea mines that have been placed in the Strait of Hormuz. So it's again, this is a situation that 6 months ago wasn't occurring. That through diplomacy back in the 2010s, Barack Obama's administration had reached an agreement with the Iranians that they would cease the research and development of nuclear weapons, that they would stop. And I know that one of the tipping points for MAGA and Republicans is that, we gifted them billions of dollars, that we literally handed them cash to stop, which isn't really the case. This is the money that was freed up and returned to them was money that had been seized by the United States over the course of several decades, that was returned to them as part of this agreement, that they would not seek the enrichment of plutonium or uranium or whatever it is in order to create nuclear weapons. And that was working. I say that based on the reporting, is that this was actually working in Iran, and or as a stabilizing piece of the for the region, that Iran was, their nuclear desires were mostly around the energy sector. And Donald Trump took office in 2017, and he tore up that deal. And almost immediately, Iran had the justification at that point to start enriching their plutonium or uranium or whatever, so that they could potentially produce nuclear weapons to defend themselves or to antagonize the region. And I'm not going to be one of those people that says that, Iran is, we shouldn't be fighting Iran, because I am of the belief that Iran is a very destabilizing force in the region. Iran is responsible for terrorist states and organizations like Hezbollah and Hamas. These are terrorist organizations. And I will not say that it's a good thing that Iran has the ability to fund these terrorist organizations. It absolutely isn't. And I recognize that there are things that occur in that region because Iran is funding them. So, is Iran's government good? No, no. During the protests that occurred last year, there are estimates that there were potentially 30,000 people that were murdered during those protests. Now, I don't know if that number is accurate. I only know that that is a estimation of the possibility of the number of people that were killed in Iran during those protests. So Iran's government is not good. Their people are potentially being slaughtered by a government that sees any uprising as being against the government, state, whatnot, is not good. It's not. Is it the responsibility of the United States to launch a war against a country? I don't feel like that's necessary. But okay, I am not anyone with any military background. I have never served. I don't even have one of these I'd have served but stories. It's not me. I don't have it. It's just not, it's not me. And I have the utmost respect for all of our veterans, all of our service members, everyone that is sacrificing their potential lives, their time. That sacrifice means a lot. And so absolutely, I have appreciation for our veterans and active military. I don't like seeing them put into harm's way in order to boost the ego of a president who does continue to appear to be on, mental decline. He does seem to be struggling a lot lately. And we can get into that in future episodes, but I'll just say that based on my experience with people that have suffered from dementia, Donald Trump, in my opinion, again, not medical opinion, I don't have any degrees or hours of any sort of research medically. I don't have a medical background, anything like that, to say definitively. But a lot of the behaviors that I see in Donald Trump, especially lately, within the last 6 months, to me, appear to be of someone who is sunsetting. It is someone who is continuing to degrade. And you'll see a lot of experts. You'll see a lot of people on, I'm going to take out the word experts. Don't go with the word experts. But there are a lot of people in social media who claim to have experience, or either professionally or personally, with dementia, that absolutely do recognize some of the things and behaviors with Donald Trump that do look like frontal temporal dementia. And that, coupled with his just megalomaniac narcissism, continue to come through almost daily. What we're seeing in a lot of what he does, including, people, if Joe Biden legitimately fell asleep in front of cameras the same way that Donald Trump does, the right would be flipping out. The right would be calling for the 25th Amendment. The right would be calling for impeachment. And you have to remember, the last 2 years of Joe Biden's term, the House was in control by Republicans and the Senate was in control by Republicans. They absolutely had the power to impeach him. They couldn't convict him. I cannot imagine that they would have had the votes to convict him in the Senate, but they could have impeached him, and they didn't. And I think that's something that a lot of people that look at all of this, they don't recognize some of the obvious that went on during Biden's last 2 years in office. They could have impeached him. The Republicans didn't impeach him. Were there, I think there was at least one or two times that they did try and bring about articles of impeachment, but I don't think it didn't even make it on the floor. There wasn't even a vote. So just remember that. But Donald Trump is clearly going through some severe health issues. This weekend alone, we got a report that he went to West Palm Beach to go to a dentist. I'm just gonna acknowledge something. Donald Trump doesn't have any real teeth left. Now, that doesn't mean he shouldn't go to a dentist. He should absolutely continue to go to a dentist. But would this be the one time in history where we had a president that could not see the White House dentist? Like, there's a dentist at the White House. There's an orthopedist or orthodontist or ortho whatever at the White House. Like, we have that staff. It's part of the White House staff. So why would Donald Trump have to travel to West Palm Beach in order to get a dental cleaning or a dental checkup or something like that? And there's never any real transparency when it comes to what goes on in his schedule that really gives us enough information for there not to be more questions. So Donald Trump having to travel to West Palm Beach in order to go see a dentist leaves a lot of questions. And then when you have Representative Nancy Mace, who's running for governor here in South Carolina, when you have her saying to pray for the president, raises questions. You have others in the administration that are acknowledging through tweets and things like that the president is, to pray for the president. And you know what? Thoughts and prayers, whatever. But the lack of transparency, I think, is what makes things more and more difficult in order to try and understand or really get a grasp on what it is that's going on with this president and his health. He had another one of these cognitive tests, and that's mine on the board. And it took about half an hour to go through. And I will fully admit I got 29 out of 30. The part where you're supposed to tap out every time you hear the letter A, I tapped early because I was anticipating a letter A, and so 29 out of 30. Technically, I aced it. But Donald Trump recently had another cognitive test, which he was bragging about, and said that he had aced it, But according to the reports, there were like there were either 4 or 6 doctors in the room while he's taking this cognitive test. And this cognitive test isn't surgical. It isn't medical. It is simply designed. It's the Montreal Cognitive Assessment. And the whole idea behind this particular test is to get an idea of where an individual is cognitively. Are they on decline? And that's the whole point of this test, is to get an idea of if their cognitive abilities are declining. So why would you give a president who claims to have no cognitive decline the same Montreal test multiple times in a year? Because he had it 2 or 3 times last year, and then he just recently had it again. That in itself leaves a lot of questions. And lately, with this White House Correspondents' Dinner, I don't want to say it was an attempted assassination, because the likelihood of this alleged assassin of actually making it all the way to the president was highly unlikely. He had a manifesto, apparently, that designated a lot of the people in the administration, maybe even just particularly one, as being, disgusting pedophiles and things like that. And, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But it is obviously, there's so many questions, and it's opened up a lot of doors back to July of 2024, when the then candidate Trump was involved in an assassination attempt that did kill two individuals. Well, one for sure. I've heard a second one for some reason. I think I've heard people mention a second one, but I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at that. But I know that the father and husband, who was a firefighter, that he did lose his life. He was in the stands and he was trying to protect his family, and he did take a round that did end his life, and that's awful. But because of this latest assassination attempt, I say with, air quotes, because of that, it's had a lot of even right-wing conservative pundits and podcasters and things like that go back and sort of do a reassessment of what occurred in July of 2024. And they are questioning some of the things that should be questioned. The fact that, I said it before, Donald Trump is a malignant narcissist. His brain does not operate the same as most people, in the sense that there's no sense of empathy. He has zero empathy for anyone but himself. He has no ability to be sympathetic for anyone but himself. And it's absolutely a fact. For anyone that looks at this president and says, no, he cares about people and things like that. He doesn't. And you are absolutely fooling yourself if you think that you stroll up on his front door begging for food or aid or shelter, you're going to get turned away. He does not give any bit of care for anyone but himself. I can't even firmly say that he would take care of his own family if they asked for it. Really, I can't. And, as sad as that is, he is a malignant narcissist, and coupled with the dementia. But the thing about the malignant narcissism is the fact that Donald Trump doesn't speak about that Butler, Pennsylvania event. He does not speak on it. The last time that he actually specifically called it by name, or the event, was during the Republican National Convention in 2024 before his election. And what he said was, this is the last time I'm ever going to talk about this. And you don't think that a guy who took a bullet near his ear and survived isn't going to stand up and be like, I'm the guy that took, my life was almost lost. Like, he's not going to talk about that if it actually happened the way it is reported to have happened. Donald Trump would talk about it every single day. He would talk and talk. He would tweet about it. He would truth about it. He would be in front of the press about it every single day, because that's who he is. That's where his brain is at. He is a malignant narcissist. He can't help it. But because that event, to some people, may not have happened the way that it's been reported that it happened, it is entirely possible that we don't have all the information. And the fact that there has not been an actual open and closed investigation into what happened, I would bet that most people can't even remember the name of the assailant. I would bet that most people couldn't even remember how old he is. But the fact that we don't have an actual investigation into what happened, I think, in my head, really opens up a lot of questions. And apparently, there's a lot of people on the right that are having a hard time understanding why this president didn't have as much control as he has over the Department of Justice and the FBI, why they haven't done a thorough investigation into what actually happened. So we're going to talk a lot about more of this. The All About Nothing podcast kind of daily show is back. Again, Bill Kimmler unable to be on the show until maybe sometime in November because he is running the campaign for Dr. Jamil Brooks, who is running for State House out of the Greenwood County area. Again, I think it's District 12. But make sure to go check out Bill Kimmler and Dr. Jamil Brooks. Of course, Bill Kimmler and Dr. Jamil Brooks host Black, White, and Blue in the South, which is available every other Wednesday from the Big Media Podcast Network, which you can hear anywhere you listen to podcasts as well. The All About Nothing podcast. You can make sure to follow us and subscribe wherever you listen, whether it's YouTube or Apple or Spotify or whatever. So please make sure to do it. That is going to wrap it up for this episode. Big thanks to everybody for watching. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, you can follow me at Barrett Kruger across all of social media. Thanks for liking and hitting that bell. And if you can, give us a 5-star review and leave a comment wherever you're listening. Until next time, you all stay safe, be kind, and keep your